cost much less than the physical counterpart?
Oh, yeah, this is an interesting question, and of course we're in a difficult position because we work with publishers, but at the same time we're trying to push technology in the boundaries surrounding ebooks and e-textbooks. If you ask the publishers, they would say it's because they're still investing the same amount of money in the production of that content in the first place. They'll tell you that the majority of the money and the investment that comes with creating a textbook is around the pedagogy and the content that sits within it. It's not around the physical book itself and the distribution of that book. I tend to disagree with them a little bit, and I think that it would be really interesting to see the breakdown of the cost of textbook. I've not seen before. I think someone should probably look into that. We see with our partners that more and more tend to be discounting their digital books over the textbook, but it still only tends to be a small amount, 20 to 30% normally. I think textbooks in the long run will come down a little bit, but I think because there is somewhat of a oligopoly in that space, we're not going to see a drastic discount anytime soon. I think the solution to this is probably actually different models of charging. We see in the US, rental schemes have worked really well. So there are companies now who will actually buy the books from publishers, but then rent them to students. And they'll rent them to a few different students in a year group. And they'll sometimes, when there isn't a new edition, they can reuse it the year afterwards. But it tends to work really well. It's slightly more affordable for a student, though still expensive. And the rental company can then charge for this book to be rented out multiple times. We also see some publishers experimenting in the paper chapter instance, which I think we'll see more of going forward. Publishers have been a little reluctant to adopt it early on just because it's an unproven model. For them it's very new, but there is interest in this space. The idea there is that some students only need half the chapters in a book. A lot of chapters are not used by particular departments, and university institutions will often only use the content in half a book. So therefore, why should a student pay for the entire book when they could just pay for half of it? And this idea that you only have to pay per chapter is a really interesting one, and we've seen a few people experiment in that space. I think we'll see more of it going forward. I think the ultimate end goal, and this is what we would like to see, though we're nowhere near it, is the sort of Spotify, all-you-can-eat, pay for a subscription model where you get access to any book, any textbook, any digital curriculum, but you only pay a flat fee every month. Now, if that ever happens, it won't be for many years, largely because the publishers don't want to go down that route. It's an unfamiliar territory. They would be very scared of it. But I think that, from the consumer perspective, would be the winning model, and I think there will be people who try to do that in the future.
What about these free educational apps? Do they have any value? Do they have any future in the education space?
Well, I think there's a lot of free content out there which is of high value to students. One thing we do is we produce a lot of free content in our mobile exam preparation apps just to attract students in the first place. So we make a lot of high quality content available for free. Teachers have produced this stuff, it's all been fact checked, it's of a really high standard, and any student who downloads our app gets free access to that. And the whole reason we do that is essentially as a marketing tool. It gets users in there in the first place. We obviously then hope that they'll go and buy content from our publishing partners, so buy an ebook for instance, but they can use all the free quizzes that we produce internally without ever having to buy it if they don't buy an ebook if they don't want to. So a large portion of our user base are free users. I think the really interesting thing about the education space is we're seeing more and more content creators out there. A lot of teachers now will go and throw up videos on YouTube, or they'll build their own resource site. Those are of real value to students, but the problem is they don't tend to reach a large volume of students. They just tend to reach the classroom or the school of that individual teacher. And I think what we'll see going forward is sort of aggregations of that content or resource websites which are linked to other places. This is kind of what we're sort of looking into now, is how can we take all the content that is so fragmented on the web and out there and actually better guide students and signpost to it. Because that's one of the problems when it comes to free content, is there's a lot out there, but students tend not to know what's of a high enough standard or where it is. And with the right guidance, they can make better use of that free content.
When will education finally be paperless?
When will education be paperless? It's impossible to say, and I think it will never be completely paperless, because I think people do have to learn to write. We're always going to need some handwriting in some aspects of life, so there will always be that element of learning.